The autumn morning was cold and clear, the forest near the small cabin alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. A young girl named Lila, no older than 16, walked the familiar trails, her camera hanging from her shoulder. She often came here, drawn to the quiet of the pines and the steady flow of the river nearby. The forest had always been a place of peace, where she could lose herself in the patterns of light filtering through the branches. But on this day, the air felt heavy, charged with a strange unease. A faint sound, sharp and desperate, broke the stillness, a cry that didn't belong to any bird or small creature Lila knew. Her steps slowed, her breath catching as she scanned the trees, searching for the source of the sound that tugged at her heart. Lila moved cautiously toward the sound, her boots sinking into the soft, moss-covered ground. The cry grew louder, more urgent, as she pushed through a tangle of low branches. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from a deep, aching pull toward the source of the distress. The forest seemed to close in around her, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Then she saw it, a small bear cub, no bigger than a dog, caught in a patch of thorny brambles. Its fur was matted, one paw twisted awkwardly in the vines, and its dark eyes glistened with panic. The cub's cries were weak now, its tiny body trembling with exhaustion. Lila stopped, her breath shallow, knowing the danger of approaching a wild animal but unable to turn away from its suffering. Lila knelt slowly, her movements deliberate to avoid startling the cub. Its whimpers softened as she drew closer, as if it sensed her intent. The thorns had dug into its paw, leaving small streaks of blood on its fur. Her hands shook as she reached out, carefully parting the brambles. The cub flinched at first, its body tensing, but it didn't pull away. Lila worked quickly, her fingers stung by the thorns, her jacket catching on the sharp edges. She ignored the pain, focused only on freeing the cub. After several tense minutes, the last vine gave way, and the cub's paw came free. It stumbled forward, collapsing against her leg, its small frame shivering. Lila's chest tightened with a mix of relief and sorrow, seeing the cub's trust in her despite its fear. The forest fell silent, save for the soft, uneven breaths of the bear cub pressed against Lila's leg. She remained still, her hand hovering just above the cub's matted fur, unsure whether to touch it or keep her distance. The cub's eyes, wide and dark, looked up at her, no longer filled with panic but with a fragile trust that made her throat tighten. The weight of the moment pressed down on her. The cub was free, but its small body was weak, its paw still bleeding slightly from where the thorns had pierced it. Lila's mind raced with the reality of the situation. She knew bears well enough from her time in the forest. A cub this young was never far from its mother. The thought sent a chill through her, and her eyes darted to the dense trees surrounding the clearing. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, made her heart lurch. She scanned the shadows, expecting the mother bear to emerge at any moment, protective and fierce. Yet the forest remained still, almost too still, as if it were holding its breath. Lila's hands trembled as she gently shifted her weight, trying to decide what to do next. She couldn't leave the cub here, alone and vulnerable, but staying felt like tempting fate. The cub let out a soft whimper, nuzzling closer to her, and the sound broke something in her. She felt a deep ache, a need to protect this small creature, even if it meant risking her own safety. She carefully adjusted her position, keeping her movements slow, and pulled her scarf from her neck. With gentle hands, she wrapped it loosely around the cub's injured paw to stem the bleeding, her fingers brushing against its soft, warm fur. The cub didn't resist, its body relaxing slightly under her touch. Lila's heart pounded, torn between the instinct to flee and the overwhelming urge to stay. As Lila sat there, the cub's warmth against her leg, the forest silence was shattered by a loud crack of branches. Her body froze, every muscle tensing as she turned her head toward the sound. From the edge of the clearing, a massive figure emerged, a mother bear, her fur dark and thick, her presence filling the space with raw power. The bear's eyes locked onto Lila, then shifted to the cub, her massive head lowering as she took a slow, deliberate step forward. Lila's breath caught in her chest, her pulse hammering in her ears. She knew the stories of mother bears, how their love for their young made them fierce, unyielding. The cub stirred, letting out a weak cry, and tried to stand, its injured paw faltering under its weight. The mother bear's gaze returned to Lila, her eyes narrowing, her breath coming in heavy, visible puffs in the cold air. Lila's hands shook as she instinctively moved to shield the cub, though she knew it was futile against such strength. The bear took another step, her massive paws sinking into the earth, and Lila braced herself, her mind racing with fear but also with a strange clarity. She didn't move, didn't look away, holding the bear's gaze as steadily as she could. The cub whimpered again, struggling to move toward its mother, and the sound seemed to shift something in the air. The mother bear paused, her body still taut, but her head tilted slightly, as if assessing the scene. Lila's heart ached as she saw the cub's effort, its small body straining to reach safety. She gently nudged the cub forward, her hands trembling as she helped it stand. The cub stumbled toward the mother bear, its cries softer now, more hopeful. The mother bear lowered her head further, sniffing the cub as it reached her, her massive form softening ever so slightly. Lila remained frozen, her eyes never leaving the bear, her body braced for whatever would come next. The mother bear stood over her cub, her massive form casting a shadow across the clearing. The cub nuzzled against her, its small body pressing close to her thick fur, seeking comfort and safety. The mother's eyes remained fixed on Lila, unblinking, her gaze intense but no longer sharp with threat. The air was heavy with tension, the forest still holding its breath. Lila's heart pounded, her body rigid as she kept her eyes locked with the bear's, unsure of what the next moment would bring. The cub's cries had stopped, replaced by soft, contented grunts as it burrowed closer to its mother. The bear lowered her head again, sniffing the cub thoroughly, her nose brushing over the scarf still wrapped around its injured paw. Lila's breath hitched, expecting the bear to react to the foreign object, but the mother only paused, her eyes flicking back to Lila. There was a shift in the bear's stance, a subtle easing of her shoulders, as if she understood the care that had been given to her young. Lila's hands remained still, her body aching from the effort of staying motionless. The cub, now steadier, pressed itself closer to its mother, its injured paw held gingerly off the ground. The mother bear let out a low, rumbling sound, not a growl but something softer, almost like a sigh. She took a step back, her massive paws silent on the forest floor, and nudged the cub gently with her snout. Lila watched, her chest tight with a mix of fear and awe, as the bear's demeanor softened further. The moment stretched on, each second heavy with the weight of what could have been, and what now was. Lila's eyes stung with unshed tears, the raw emotion of the scene overwhelming her. She had acted on instinct, driven by the cub's pain, and now stood face to face with a creature whose power could have ended her life. Yet the bear's gaze held no malice, only a quiet acknowledgement. The mother bear took another step back, her movements slow and deliberate, guiding the cub away from Lila. The cub followed, its steps uneven but determined, staying close to its mother's side. Lila remained frozen, her body still braced, her eyes tracking the pair as they moved toward the edge of the clearing. The mother bear paused once more, turning her head to look back at Lila. Her eyes, dark and deep, held a weight that seemed to carry more than instinct. There was a softness, a recognition that stirred something deep in Lila's chest. The cub, now safely tucked against its mother, let out a small, contented sound, its injured paw still wrapped in the scarf. The mother bear's gaze lingered for a moment longer, her massive form silhouetted against the trees, before she turned fully and began to move into the forest. The cub followed, its small body disappearing into the underbrush alongside its mother. The sound of their movement faded, the rustle of leaves and snapping twigs growing distant until the forest was silent once more. Lila exhaled, her breath shaky, her body trembling as the tension drained from her. She remained kneeling on the cold ground, her hands stained with dirt and small scratches from the thorns. The weight of what had just happened settled over her, heavy and profound. She had faced a mother bear, a creature of raw strength and wild instinct, and yet she was unharmed. The cub was safe, reunited with its mother, and the scarf, her scarf, had been left behind, a small token of the moment. Lila's heart ached with a mix of relief and sadness, The image of the cub's frightened eyes and the mother's steady gaze burned into her memory. She stayed there for a long moment, the forest quiet around her, as if honoring the fragile connection that had just passed between human and bear. Lila slowly rose to her feet, her legs unsteady from kneeling so long on the cold forest floor. The clearing felt emptier now, the absence of the bear and her cub leaving a quiet that was both peaceful and heavy. Her hands, scratched and stinging from the thorns, hung limply at her sides, and her camera, forgotten during the ordeal, rested against her chest. The forest had returned to its usual sounds, soft rustles of leaves, the distant call of a bird, but the moment lingered in Lila's mind, vivid and unshakable. She looked at the spot where the cub had been trapped, the brambles still bent and broken from her efforts to free it. The scarf was gone, carried away with the cub, a small piece of her now part of their story. Her chest tightened with a mix of emotions, relief that the cub was safe, sorrow for its pain, and a deep, unnameable feeling that came from standing so close to something wild and powerful. She took a step toward the brambles, her fingers brushing over the torn vines, as if to confirm the reality of what had happened. The mother bear's gaze, that final look of recognition, played over and over in her mind. It wasn't just gratitude, but something deeper, a shared understanding that transcended the boundaries between them. Lila's eyes filled with tears, not from fear but from the weight of the connection she had felt. She had acted without thinking, driven by the cub's cries, and in doing so had faced a force far greater than herself. The forest seemed to watch her now, its silence a gentle acknowledgement of her courage. She turned slowly, her boots crunching on the fallen leaves, and began to walk back toward the trail. Each step felt heavier, as if the moment had changed her, leaving her tethered to this place in a way she couldn't explain. The air was colder now, the light fading through the trees, but Lila felt a warmth in her heart, a quiet strength born from what she had done. In the days and weeks that followed, Lila returned to the forest often, drawn back to the clearing where she had saved the cub. Each visit was a quiet pilgrimage, a way to honor the moment that had changed her. The brambles had grown back, their thorns no longer holding any trace of the cub's struggle, but the memory remained sharp and clear. She would stand in the clearing, her camera untouched, and close her eyes, picturing the cub's frightened face and the mother bear's steady gaze. The forest felt different now, not just a place of beauty but a witness to something profound. Lila carried the experience with her, a quiet lesson in courage and compassion that shaped her every step. She never saw the cub or its mother again, but she didn't need to. Their presence lingered in the rustle of the trees, in the soft murmur of the river, in the stillness of the clearing. The scarf, a small sacrifice, was a symbol of the bond she had forged, however brief, with the wild. Lila's heart held a quiet gratitude, for the cub's safety, for the mother's trust, and for the reminder that even in the face of fear, kindness could bridge the gap between worlds. The forest, vast and untamed, had taught her that life, in its most fragile and fleeting moments, could reveal a connection deeper than words, a thread that tied her to the wild forever.